Gittin, Erev Shabbos, my holy sisters and brothers. So great to be back learning with you. Nina and I enjoyed our much needed getaway. We didn't get away too far, but we got away from the hustle and bustle mostly. Being in post-production on the movie, there's always little brush fires that come up. I had to do some work, even during our days off, but okay. The movie is coming along. We're very excited. We don't have the release date yet. It'll be sometime next year, God willing, but everything keeps moving forward. How have you been? Have you continued your learning? We're going to do a highlights show today. We're not going to get entirely caught up, but we'll cover 3 dafs, 3 pages. Slide up the darkness. Who's in the house on a Friday? Please, God, tell me we're not going to be glitchy. Please, not today. Bill in mid-Missouri, Gordo in Scotland, Sharon in New Jersey, Bella in Florida, Shandor in the Bronx, Renee in Indiana, Tom wishing everyone a good Shabbos, Lucy in Minnesota, Sam in Norway. So great to have people from across the pond. That's the beauty of the early class on Friday. Aoife says, welcome back. Marjorie in Georgia. Marie in Freeport. Aoife says, hope you had a good time. Doing a whole lot of nothing after what we've been through these the last year, especially the last 6 months. It was good. We needed a bit of rest, and it was good. Probably ate a little too much rich food. So now I'm getting myself on that intermittent fasting program. Stop eating after dinner. Don't do the late night snacks. We all know it's not a good idea to have the late night snacks. And then the next morning, you don't have to eat as soon as you wake up. Try not to eat until lunchtime. When they told us breakfast, the most important meal of the day, maybe for some people, but truthfully, from what I understand, for most people, good to get up and get moving in the morning and finish digesting the food that you ate yesterday before you start the cycle again. My digestive system always a little bit Jewish, as it were. All Jews have slight amounts of indigestion. And I definitely have found that if you just let the digestion finish before you start in on the new digestion, system works better. Okay. Today's episode of AT Daily, covering 3 pages, is sponsored by Sanford Bristol in memory of Richard Muchnick. Sanford, thank you for enabling us to share more Torah with more people around the world. May Richard's neshama, the soul of Richard Muchnick, have a great aliyah, a great elevation in the world of souls, and maybe rise even a little higher in the merit of our learning today. And Sanford, may you and all your loved ones be showered in blessings. Thank you for enabling us to share more Torah with more people around the world. There. Let's get into it. Where are we holding? So we're in Tractate Gittin, the 19th volume of the Talmud. These are the laws of divorce. We're in chapter 4, continuing our discussion of Mishna number 1, which God willing will complete today. This first Mishnah in chapter 4 says that if a husband writes out a get for his wife and sends it to her via an agent that he appoints, so once the agent leaves, right, the agent has been deputized on a mission to deliver that get to the wife. When she receives the get, and it has to be witnessed by witnesses when she receives it, but when she receives that get, they are divorced. Now, if the husband sends the get with the agent leaves, now the husband says, what have I done? What have I done? I don't want to divorce my wife. So previously, and I mean previously to the times of the Mishnah, right? Previously to the times of the Mishnah. So the Mishnah codified around 200 of the Common Era, the year 200. So in earlier generations before that, it was permissible for the husband who regretted sending the get to convene even a small rabbinic court, and a rabbinic court could even be made of laymen who function as witnesses for such a purpose. And they say, and the husband says, I revoke, right? I am voiding the get that I sent with my agent. I regret that I sent it. I don't want to be divorced, and I cancel that get. And they would allow that. And now the get, even if it's delivered to the wife, would be a void get, and she is not divorced. What's the problem with that? If the wife receives the get from the agent, the last thing the agent heard is valid get. He gives it to the wife. He makes sure to do it in front of witnesses. She's divorced, as far as she knows. So she might go ahead and remarry based on this get. Perhaps this get was brought from overseas. So she goes ahead and remarries with a second husband, and maybe they have kids. If she was never divorced from the same husband, that second marriage is a sham. It's a marriage without validity. If any children are born to that second couple, they're mamzerim. You know, they're mamzers. They're children who are not allowed to marry other Jews, even though they're Jewish, because they're born of adultery. That is a terrible sin that actually causes harm to the children who are the product of it. So this is an extremely harmful and dangerous scenario. And to prevent that from ever happening, I believe it was Gamliel the elder, Rabban Gamliel the elder, the Nasi, the head of the Sanhedrin, who decreed on behalf of the sages, no more. No more. The only way that you can stop a get once you sent it with your agent as a husband is you got to catch that agent and stop him from delivering the get to the wife. Or you have to reach your wife in time and tell her that that get she's about to receive from you is no good. If you, in the absence of stopping the agent or reaching the wife first, you can't revoke the get. The get reaches her, and you're now divorced. If she and you want to remarry, you can do that as long as she hasn't gone and been with somebody else in the meantime. But the only way to revoke the get is to stop the agent or reach the wife first. That's our Mishnah that we've been discussing. We picked this up on page 33a. We're going to cover 3 pages today, so we're not going to cover every bit of all the 3 pages. We're going to skip around a bit, so it's a highlights show of these 3 pages. When we complete these 3 pages today, God willing, then we will have finished page 35. The Daf Yomi schedule is on page 38, so we're going to be running essentially 3 pages behind. We'll have to do 4 in one day to catch up after that, or maybe 2 on 2 days, something like that. We'll figure it out. Okay. A few paragraphs from the top on page 33a. The Mishnah taught that Rabban Gamliel the elder instituted that one may not render a bill of divorce void in a court elsewhere for the betterment of the world. That's how they're translating Tikkun HaOlam, which last Saturday night we distinguished from Tikkun Olam. Tikkun Olam is a mystical concept which holds that in a sense, we're going to repair the world that was, fragmented when God shone God's light into the world. This world was too, too material, too fragile, too unspiritual to handle the full light of God's, divine energy. This is totally a class for another day, but this is a kind of a Kabbalistic concept according to the Arizal, Rav Yitzhak Luria. And so this is a broken world, and our mission in this world is to repair the world. That's Tikkun Olam. That concept also gets appropriated very much in modern times by people engaged in social action, social justice, also calling it repair the world. But Tikkun HaOlam, betterment of the world or repair of the world, HaOlam, right? This is more what is good for the Jews. And so, divorce laws under Jewish law only apply to Jews. And this is one of the concepts, we're going to learn a few others, that the sages decreed for the benefit of the Jewish people, just so we don't create problems for ourselves, right? It's not to make us better than other people, but just so we don't create problems for ourselves. right? Allowing a husband to cancel a divorce after he sent the get could really end up harming the wife, right? So this is like in order to protect the wife, and this general category of tikkun ha'olam, betterment of the world, which means, the Jewish world, okay? So that's what our Mishnah taught. So the Gemara asks, what problem did Rabban Gamliel ameliorate that this is considered to be for the betterment of the world? And Rabbi Yochanan says this is for the benefit of potential children born from an adulterous relationship, a mamzerim, as the husband might render a bill of divorce void without his wife's knowledge. And she might remarry, as I explained earlier, and she might remarry after having received the void bill of divorce, when in fact she is still married to her first husband, and children born of the second marriage will be mamzerim. To prevent this, Rabban Gamliel instituted that one may not render the bill of divorce void when not in the location of his wife, or when he can't stop the agent from reaching his wife. That's Rabbi Yochanan's opinion of why Rabban Gamliel made that decree. Reish Lakish, the good friend and debate partner of Rabbi Yochanan, Reish Lakish says, for the betterment of deserted wives, not women who will falsely believe they've been divorced, but rather women who receive their bill of divorce by means of the husband's agent and who might refrain from remarrying out of the concern that perhaps their husband had rendered the bill of divorce void. Right? So women might think, well, okay, I received the bill of divorce, but maybe he changed his mind. And then she might be stuck waiting, and maybe the husband never comes home and she can't get the word. And even though she's free to remarry, she doesn't feel free to remarry because she can't be sure and she doesn't want to take a chance of getting into a second false marriage. So for clarity on all counts, both for the women who refrain from remarrying out of this fear, or women who do remarry and then are later, have the ground ripped out from under them, either way you look at it, much better that Rabban Gamliel instituted this decree. Skip a few paragraphs, and we learn. The sages taught if a husband said to 10 people, write a bill of divorce for my wife, in which case any one of them may write the bill of divorce, and 2 others will serve as witnesses, right? This is a husband, and we're talking about the nature of agency here. How carefully did he appoint an agent, and to what job did he appoint them? There were 10 people present, and he said to all of them, write a bill of divorce for my wife. He didn't say all 10 of you. He didn't say you. He kind of like, said it to 10 people. Parenting advice. You got 2 kids in the kitchen, and you say, make sure that kitchen is clean. And you didn't say the names of your 2 children or which child is going to have which duty. You just bark out that command. Generally, that kitchen's not getting clean. You want to be specific. That's with children, with employees, with agents, right? Whoever, you want to be specific when you are giving an instruction. But in this case, the husband said to 10 people, write a bill of divorce for my wife. So this is understood as any one of them is now deputized to write the bill of divorce, and 2 of the others can serve as the witnesses for that. So write a bill of divorce for my wife, in which case any one of them may write the bill of divorce and 2 others will serve as witnesses. So he can render his instructions void before this one, i.e. any one of them, by stating, do not write the bill of divorce, even though it is not before that one, meaning any other one of them. This is the statement of Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel says he can render his instructions void only when this one is before that one, meaning all of them are present. If he gave this instruction to 10 people, so any one of them can take up the order, write the bill of divorce, get 2 others to serve as witnesses, and deliver that bill of divorce, and the husband and wife are going to be divorced. If he wants to now cancel his instruction, he has to issue the cancel order in front of all 10 people. Because if they, scattered, let's say 3 groups went out, one group of 3, another group of 4, Any of those groups could take it upon themselves to write the bill of divorce for the husband. And the fact that he said to one of those people or one of those groups, stop, don't do it, he can't be sure that the other groups didn't go and run with his initial order. Right? So Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi says it's enough that he issues the instruction before witnesses, any partial subset of that group. No, I don't want to write a get. But Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, the son of Rabban Gamliel, says, no. You issued the instruction to 10 people, in front of 10 people. You got to issue the revoke order in front of the same 10. Now the Gemara asks, with regard to what principle do Rabbi and Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel disagree? And the Gemara answers, they disagree with regard to whether testimony that was partially invalidated is entirely invalidated. Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi holds testimony that was partially invalidated is not entirely invalidated. Now we're on 33b. And therefore, even though the husband nullified the agency of part of the group, if these other people whose agency was never nullified go and write the bill of divorce and give it to the wife, let them write and give the bill of divorce. There's nothing to be concerned about, as their agency was never nullified. From a legal point of view, their agency was never nullified, and this is a valid get. Since the get that they deliver is valid, there is no reason to institute an ordinance that a husband can nullify the agency only in the presence of the entire group. There's no reason to be concerned in the sense that the law is clear, but I guess there is a reason to be concerned that this husband thought he nullified the get and he didn't, right? So Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel disagrees with Rabbi. And he holds testimony that was partially invalidated is entirely invalidated. And if the agency of part of the group was nullified when those agents were not in the presence of the rest of the group, then those others do not know that their agency has been nullified as well. And they might then go and write a bill of divorce and give it. And they will cause the court to mistakenly permit a married woman to marry anyone. Pardon me, a little hot in here again. Clearly getting into the summer months. And Shabbos tomorrow night, I believe, is the latest ending of Shabbos of the year. So we won't be doing a multiple dafs class tomorrow night. We'll keep it just to one short daf. Okay, where was I? Is entire. And if you wish, say instead that everyone agrees that testimony that was partially invalidated is not entirely invalidated. And here, this is the reason of Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel that the husband can nullify his instructions only in the presence of all of the agents. He holds that a matter that is performed in the presence of 10 people requires the presence of 10 people to revoke it. Since the husband instructed 10 people to write the get, he cannot revoke his instructions in the presence of only a portion of them. Makes sense. We skip a bunch of paragraphs. Now we're into page 34a, a couple of paragraphs from the top. The Gemara relates some incidents illustrating this law. A man named Gidul bar Re'elai sent a get to his wife, and the agent went and found that she was sitting and weaving. And he said to her, "This is your get." And she said to him, "At least go away from here now and come tomorrow to give me the get." She said, "Okay, my marriage is going to be over, but let it not be over today. Bring me the get tomorrow." He said, "Okay." The agent went back to the husband, Gidul bar Re'elai, and told him what had occurred. And Gidul opened his mouth and said, "Blessed is he who is good and does good," as he was happy that the bill of divorce, that the get, had not been delivered. Now, what is he happy about? Is he happy that he sent a get to his wife and she said, "Let's be married one more day, deliver it tomorrow, not today"? And he said, "Okay, you know what? She's right. I'm glad that my agent, you didn't just throw it into her domain. You came back to me, and we're going to send her the get tomorrow." Or is the husband saying, "You know what? Thank God it worked out this way. She said, wait one more day. You came back to me. I've had a chance to think about it. God orchestrated these events. I don't want to divorce my wife. Now, he didn't say, you know what, I changed my mind. Don't deliver that get. What he said was, thank God, who is good and who does good, that this get was not delivered today. So in expressing himself that he's glad the get wasn't delivered, has he actually expressed that he doesn't want the get delivered at all? And this get is therefore voided, rendered void. If he's gonna divorce her, he should, write up another get another time. Or is it just, thank God it wasn't delivered today, but it can be delivered tomorrow? What has he expressed with this communication that he's happy it wasn't delivered today? So the sages disagreed with regard to the status of this get. Abaye said that when the husband said, blessed is he who is good and does good, he was happy that it was not delivered, but the get is not rendered void through this statement. Rava and Abaye are disputing partners just like Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish. Rava said that the husband said, blessed is he who is good and does good, and therefore the get is rendered void. Gemara asks, okay, with regard to what principle do Rava and Abaye disagree? And the Gemara answers, they disagree in their understanding of disclosure of intent with regard to a get, i.e., when the husband demonstrates that he does not desire the get to be delivered, but does not render it void explicitly, right? That's our situation. So in that situation, what does the law hold? So Abaye holds disclosure of intent with regard to a get is not a significant matter, and it does not render it void. And Rava holds disclosure of intent with regard to a get is a significant matter, right? So clearly they disagree. If the husband shows, you know what, I didn't really want it to go, then he didn't want it to go. Void the get. That's according to Rava. But Abaye says, listen, you wrote out the get, you gave it to an agent, and you sent it. The fact that you regret it after that, unless you go and personally stop the agent, doesn't mean anything. It has no legal significance. What your feelings are doesn't matter. The fact is, you wrote a get and sent it to your wife. So that legal document is only going to be canceled when you legally cancel it, by ripping it up, by stopping the agent, by going to your wife and saying, don't accept the get. I regret sending the get. Those actions have legal significance. But revealing your feelings about the matter doesn't have legal significance. And as we'll see, the law follows Abaye. Rava said, from where do I say this law? Right, that if you show that your feelings are you don't want to deliver the get, it actually does cancel the get. Rava said, from where do I say this law? From a case where Rav Sheshes extracted the authorization to write a get from a certain man against his will. And that man then said to the witnesses. So first let's understand what we're talking about. Rava says that I can see that a person who is reluctant to give a get, that cancels the get. Just the fact that we reveal that his reluctance, that he really doesn't want to get divorced, that's enough to void the get. And he's going to take that, he's going to learn that out from a situation in which a man is forced to give a get. Who is forced to give a get? These are the guys who won't give their wives a get, even though the marriage is over. Right? This is the kind of, husband that creates a wife who is an aguna, a stranded wife. She can never get on with her life. She cannot remarry. Right? Because in traditional Jewish law, only the husband can give the get, and the wife receives it. If he refuses to give the get, she can't get out of the marriage. Now, even under traditional Jewish law, there are ways to address this kind of situation where you have a husband who's acting like an absolute jerk and will not. Every situation is different, but I'm saying in a situation where the husband is acting like a jerk, cruel, and won't release the wife, a rabbi can step in and coerce the husband to give the get. Well, if you're saying that reluctance to give the get is going to cancel the get, then how can a coerced get ever be valid? The answer is because of the sort of equity of the situation, the rabbi can step in and coerce that husband to give the get. But the nature of that coercion has to be that you force the husband to understand it's the right thing to do, it's in his interest to give it, and it's not exactly free will giving the get, but it's enough that the situation has been created where we can say the husband is giving the get. It's not being taken from him, right? He's being coerced, but he's being coerced because he put himself in a situation where he had to be coerced, and now he's going to sort of acknowledge that and give the get. But listen to how this story played out, where there was an actual instance like this. Rav Sheshes, it was a case where Rav Sheshes extracted the authorization to write a bill of divorce, to write a get, from a certain man against his will. And that man, the husband, then said to the witnesses, "This is what Rav Sheshes said to you. Let the bill of divorce be rendered void." I mean, that Rav Sheshes didn't say let the bill of divorce be rendered void. Rav Sheshes is the one extracting the bill or forcing the husband to authorize agents to write that get for his wife. But that husband is saying, he's lying, but he's saying, Rav Sheshes is telling you not to write the get. Not me. Rav Sheshes is telling you not to write the get. And Rav Sheshes, because that man said that, even though it was a lie, Rav Sheshes required him to write another bill of divorce. So evidently, though the man did not explicitly render the bill of divorce void with his own statement, but only demonstrated with his lie about Rav Sheshes that he did not want the get to be given to his wife, Rav Sheshes considered that get to be rendered void, and he had to, force the husband to write a new get. Right? It's like you can coerce the husband to write it, but if he then expresses regret, then the get's no good. You're going to have to force him to write it again until he keeps his mouth shut, until it's written and given to his wife, and then they are divorced. So based on that incident and how that went down, Rav is saying, therefore, we can see that a husband who writes a get, and even though he doesn't explicitly say, I regret it, but through some kind of expression of his mouth, shows that he regrets it, even without saying it explicitly, that's going to be enough to render the get void. So Rav is making a pretty good argument. What's Abaye going to respond? Is that to say Rav Sheshes would render void the get of other people? Rather, the husband rendered his own get void, and the reason why he told the witnesses this, that it was Rav Sheshes' instructions that the get be rendered void, was due to the lashes that he would have received from the court appointees if he said that he was rendering the get void against the wishes of Rav Sheshes. Now, this is very strange. The guy is seeking to avoid getting lashes for issuing an instruction against the orders of Rav Sheshes. And so therefore what he does is he lies about what Rav Sheshes said or didn't say, but somehow technically that gets him to, cancel the get and avoid getting lashes. And Abaye said, so from where do I say, right? And Abaye is going to end up being right. Abaye says, from where do I say that disclosure of intent with regard to a get is disregarded? It's from the case where Rav Yehuda extracted the authorization to write a get from the son-in-law of Rabbi Yirmiyah Bir'ah. And the man rendered the get void. So Rav Yehuda again extracted the authorization to write a get, and the man rendered the get void. Rav Yehuda returned and again extracted the authorization to write the get against his will, and said to the witnesses, place pieces of gourd in your ears and write the get for him, so that you will not hear if he renders the get void again. So Abaye explains his proof. And if it enters your mind that disclosure of intent with regard to a get is a significant matter, in this case, the witnesses see that he is running after them, even though they do not hear him. So the bill of divorce should be rendered void. Right? Abaye says we saw in that incident where Rav Yehuda kept extracting the bill, the guy would change his mind. And so finally Rav Yehuda says to the witnesses, put cotton in your ear so you can't hear his words. And even if he's signaling, no, I don't want the get, but they can't hear him say it explicitly, so that get is not rendered void because they didn't hear his explicit instructions. Now, obviously, the guy doesn't want that get given, but obviously he's some kind of a jerk, and Rav Yehuda had to go to great lengths to free the wife in this terrible marriage. And in such a situation, as long as we don't hear the man explicitly say cancel the get, we don't cancel the get. And so that Abaye uses that as a proof that, just revealing how he feels about it and that he would rather not divorce his wife is not enough to cancel the get. Only the husband's explicit instructions are enough to cancel the get once it's written. How does Rava respond to this argument of Abaye? Since they cannot hear him, his intent is not disclosed. The fact that he is running after them, that doesn't prove that he wishes to render the get void, as it could be that he wishes to say to them, make haste, give her the get speedily in order to end the pain of that man, meaning my pain, that I am divorcing my wife. I mean, given the circumstances where the guy already spoke up and canceled the get 2 or 3 times before Rav Yehuda finally went to this extreme and told the witnesses to cover their ears, it's obvious what his intent was. So, I think Abaye's argument makes more sense. And Abaye said further, from where do I say that disclosure of intent with regard to a get is disregarded? From the case where there was a certain man who said to the agents with whom he entrusted the get, if I do not arrive from now until 30 days have passed, let this be a get. And he came after 30 days. We saw this example. He came after 30 days had passed, but he was prevented from crossing the river by the ferry that was on the wrong side of the river. So he did not arrive within the designated time. He didn't get there by the deadline when the 30 days elapsed. He said to the people across the river, see that I have arrived. See that I have arrived. And Shmuel said it is not considered an arrival, even though it is clear that this was his intention and the bill of divorce is not voided. So Rava says to Abaye, you can't use that example as a proof. Is that to say that he desires to render the get void? There, in that case, he desires to fulfill his stipulation that if I arrive within 30 days, it is not a get. He just wants to show that he's there within 30 days. He's not saying void the get, void the get. He's just saying, I got here, but he didn't get there. We skip a few more paragraphs. That brings us to 34b. And now we are on Mishna number 2 of chapter 4. Initially, this is the Mishna. Initially, the husband would change his name and her name from the names by which they were known where they formerly lived to the names by which they were known where the get was written, and write the name of his city and the name of her city. Right? So if you have a couple that emigrated from one region to another, and when they did that, perhaps they started, perhaps they went from a place where, maybe they went from Israel to a Jewish community in Babel, right? And in Israel, everybody spoke Hebrew or Latin because the Romans were there. And in Babel, everybody spoke Hebrew everyone speaks Aramaic in these areas, but also they speak Farsi, right? They speak Persian over there in Babel, which is part of the Persian Empire. And they were there for a number of years. And perhaps in that location, they started to be known by Persian names. I don't know, I'm making that up. The point is that when they went to a new area, they came to be known by other names than the original names where they came from. I myself was born in Salvador, right? My parents called me Salvi. When we came to the United States, I was 5 years old. I felt like such a misfit. My middle name was Alejandro. I started to go by Alex, right? And I grew up, all the people that knew me growing up, junior high school, college, even law school, called me Alex. I always felt kind of embarrassed that I chickened out of using my own name. And when I got out of law school, I went back to being called Salvador, and a lot of people call me Sal. And in the Jewish world, my Hebrew name is Yoel, right? And there's some people in the world that call me Yoel, right? So, like many Geminis, I am known by various names in various places. And a lot of people have that quality that they're known by different names in different places. So what this Mishnah is addressing is when you give a get, when a husband gives a get to his wife to create a divorce, what name is written on the get? Is it the birth names of the husband and the wife, or is the names that they are known by, so that when this matter becomes publicized, everyone knows that they are divorced? So initially, the husband would change his name and her name, right? He would put the names that they're known by in the place where the get is being given. One was not required to list all of the names by which the husband and the wife were known, but only the names in the place where the bill of divorce was being written. Rabban Gamliel the elder instituted that the scribe should write in the get the man so-and-so and any other name that he has, and the woman so-and-so and any other name she has. And the reason for this ordinance was for the betterment of the world, tikkun ha'olam, as perhaps the people of a different city would not recognize the name written in the bill of divorce and would claim that this bill of divorce does not belong to her. So let me just cut to the chase here, because it's a very short Mishnah, short discussion. So what they said is, if there are people who are known by various names, when the husband writes a get, right, whether he has various names or she has various names or they both have various names, then the only name that needs to be in the get is the name they're known by in the area or the city or the town where the get is being given. But if it's a fact that they're known by other names in other places, or even in this place, they would add an any other name. Literally, this man, Reuven, let's say Reuven ben Shimon, and quote, any other name that he's known by. And then later, they changed the law to don't just write the phrase and any other names they are known by, actually write out the names that they're known by, the AKAs, right? Also known as, which makes so much sense. I mean, if you know they're known by other names, and the point of a get is to make very clear that these people are no longer married, they are prohibited to each other, but permitted to marry others, let's make it clear, right? Let's make it clear who we're talking about. And so they later instituted that if they're known by multiple names, okay, so include the multiple names in the get. And that concludes our discussion of Mishnah number 2. Here comes Mishnah number 3, also on page 34b. A widow can collect payment of her ketubah, her marriage contract, from the property of orphans. So under Jewish law, an orphan is not one who's necessarily lost both parents. Once you've lost one parent, you're an orphan under Jewish law. So a widow can collect payment of her marriage contract from the property of orphans only by means of an oath that she did not receive any part of the payment of the ketubah during her husband's lifetime. Now this makes sense, right? So when she got married, she had a ketubah, or some would pronounce it kesubah, with her husband, right? That he had to write the kesubah when they got married, and in it he agreed that if they ever divorced or he died before her, she would receive a certain amount of money. Now that money, once he dies, what's that money coming from? It comes from his estate, meaning what his children are going to inherit. So she's going to take money away from the children. Jewish law is very protective of orphans, very protective of sort of the most unprotected segment of society, right? I mean, an orphan, I lost my mother last year. That makes me an orphan, but an orphan could also obviously be a minor, a child who doesn't have legal standing, who doesn't know what his rights are, doesn't have, financial acumen, doesn't know what's going on. It'd be very easy to take advantage of an orphan. So Jewish law is going to step in and be very protective. Now, this widow, right, she might be the mother of these children, but she might well be the second wife or the co-wife of these kids. the actual mother of these kids. And so if she seeks to, take money out of the estate to pay her kasuba, they said that she has to swear an oath that she hasn't already received her kasuba payment. Maybe the husband said, listen, I want you to enjoy this money. I'm getting sick. I'm not doing well. I want to make sure you get paid. So maybe here's your whole kasuba payment, even while he's alive, or maybe gave her part of it. She has to swear that she has not received it in order to then receive it after the husband dies, because it's going to be taken out of the estate. So she has to swear that oath. In fact, anyone has to swear an oath, right? If a creditor comes and says, well, this man, before he died, he owed me a lot of money. Now you're seeking to take money away from those orphans. You're going to have to swear an oath that you haven't already been paid before the guy died. And in a pious society, swearing such an oath is a big deal. People don't want to swear oaths, particularly because maybe you received some of that money and you weren't even aware that you received it. And now you swear an oath before God that you haven't received any of it. And what if you're wrong? So then you've committed a grave sin. So requiring people to swear an oath is actually a big deal. Perhaps today in an atheist, secular, godless society, people say words and it doesn't mean anything. But certainly in the world we're talking about here, requiring someone to swear an oath is a major requirement. Right, so a widow can collect payment of her kasuba from the property of orphans only by means of an oath that she did not already receive any part of that payment during the husband's lifetime. The Mishna relates, the courts refrained from administering an oath to her. They didn't want to make the widow swear an oath. Now, they didn't change the law and say, okay, just pay her the kasuba without having to swear an oath. Rather, they said, she can only receive by swearing an oath, and we don't want her to swear an oath. So what happens? She doesn't receive. It's not as bad as it sounds. When a man dies, a widow doesn't have to get her kasuba payment. She can continue living in the house and be supported by the estate for as long as she doesn't remarry. When a widow asks for her kasuba, what she's saying is, okay, I'm going to be done with living off the estate of my husband. Just give me the kasuba payment because I want to remarry, right? She doesn't have to ask for it until she's ready to remarry. And if she's ready to remarry, okay, it would be good to get the kasuba payment, but it's not like she's going to starve because there's going to be another provider stepping in. Think traditional ancient world, right? So the courts refrained from administering an oath to her, leaving the widow unable to collect payment of her marriage contract. Rabban Gamliel the elder instituted that she should take, for the benefit of the orphans, any vow that the orphans wish to administer to her. For example, that all produce will become prohibited to her if she received any payment of her marriage contract, and after stating this vow, she collects payment of her marriage contract. Now, in other words, Rabban Gamliel said, let the women get paid. If the law is she has to swear an oath in order to receive the payment, okay, so she swears the oath. Why should we stop her from swearing an oath? You'll see in a moment why they would stop. But Rabban Gamliel said, no, let her swear the oath. She's going to take a chance on herself that she could be wrong, but if she's confident that she never received that money, then let her swear the oath and receive the kasuba payment. Now, the Mishnah lists additional ordinances that were instituted for tikkun ha'olam, for the betterment of the Jewish world. The witnesses sign their names on the bill of divorce, even though the get is valid without their signatures. Remember that the get is valid when the husband writes it out, right? It says, we're going to be divorced. You're not going to be permitted to any other man. And then he hands it to her, or his agent hands it to her in the presence of witnesses. Witnesses, to the writing of the get don't necessarily have to sign the get. Even the witnesses who witness the giving of the get don't necessarily have to sign on the get. But Rabban Gamliel said, no, it's better that the witnesses sign the get, and then that became the law. And Hillel, the great sage Hillel, of Shammai and Hillel instituted a document that prevents the sabbatical year from abrogating an outstanding debt. And this is called the prosbul, also for tikkun ha'olam, as we mentioned before, so that poor people would be able to borrow money. Because since the seventh year, the sabbatical year cancels debt, people wouldn't lend to poor people with the sabbatical year approaching because the sabbatical year will cancel the debt, right? And then poor people couldn't get loans. So Hillel said, okay, we're going to create a mechanism where if a poor person needs a loan, especially with the sabbatical year approaching, he and the lender can come before the court and create the loan, right, in the court, where technically the poor person will owe the money to the court, and the court will then pay the lender. But because the debt is owed to the court, that kind of debt is not canceled by the sabbatical year. That's Mishnah number 3. Here's the Gemara. The Gemara asks, why discuss specifically a widow? This law should apply to everyone, this idea that you swear an oath if you're going to take money out of the estate of orphans. This should apply to everyone, as we maintain that anyone who comes to collect payment from the property of orphans can collect only by means of an oath. And the Gemara answers, it was necessary for the Mishnah to mention a widow, as it might enter your mind to say, now we're on 35a, due to the increased desirability that this would bring her when trying to remarry, since this would ensure that she would bring assets into her new marriage, right, to get the ketubah payment. The sages were lenient with her, as the sages issued several decrees in connection with the ketubah in order to enable women to collect more easily. Therefore, the Mishnah teaches us that this is not the case. Right? Even though we want to make sure that women get their ketubah payments, still, if she's going to take money from the orphans, she's going to have to swear that oath. Now, the Mishnah taught that the court refrained from administering the oath to her. And the Gemara asks, what is the reason that they refrained from administering oaths to widows? If we say that it is because of the statement of Rav Kahana, as Rav Kahana says, and some say that it was Rav Yehuda who says, that Rav says, there was an incident. Right? So the law was widows can only take money out of the estate by swearing an oath that they haven't already received their money. Perhaps the reason that courts stopped administering those oaths to widows, meaning that they couldn't collect their ketubah payments, is because there was an incident. What was the incident? There was an incident involving a person during years of famine who deposited a gold dinar with a widow. And she placed the gold dinar in a jug of flour to hide it. And unwittingly, she baked that gold coin, which in a poor community was worth a lot of money. And she mistakenly baked it into a loaf of bread along with the flour. And she gave the bread as charity to a poor man. Right? So she was tasked with guarding this gold dinar. Right? She was holding it for somebody else as its guard, as its shomer. And by mistake, she baked it into a loaf of bread. And she was such a good person, she gave a loaf of bread as charity to a poor man. And so now that gold dinar went out. The poor man must have been really happy. After a period of time, the owner of the gold dinar came and said to her, "Give me my dinar." She said to him, "May poison benefit," i.e. take effect on, one of the children of that woman, which is a euphemistic way to talk about herself, if I derived any benefit from your dinar. Right? She's saying, I can't find your dinar, but I can promise you that I didn't steal it from you, and I'm going to swear the most, the most extreme vow I can swear to show you that I'm not lying to you. And so she swore, not only did I not, steal your dinar or use it or benefit from it in any way, but if I'm lying, she said, then let one of my children die. Oy, don't say things like that. Not even a few days passed until one of her children died. And when the sages heard of this matter, they said, if one who takes an oath truthfully, meaning she didn't know that she baked that dinar into a bread, she doesn't know where it went, it just got lost. She thought it was stolen. She's promising that she didn't benefit from it. And so when she spoke, she wasn't lying. And yet, for some reason, heaven punished her so severely. Now, you could say, this is just bad luck, terrible coincidence. The sages said, if one, because she did benefit in some way, as they'll say, so she just didn't know that she benefited, so she took a very, very strong oath that she shouldn't have taken because there's the possibility she was wrong. And she was wrong. So said the sages, if one who takes an oath truthfully is punished in this way for that sin, then one who takes an oath falsely, all the more so. And a widow who's anxious to get remarried might actually knowingly swear that she never received any money so that she can get the full ketubah payment because maybe she needs to have a little bit of a dowry so that she can attract her second husband. And lest she missed that opportunity, she tells such a lie, and then she could bring devastation upon herself, her children, her family, who knows how far it'll go. To prevent that from happening, the sages said, listen, we're not going to administer oaths to widows. Already, they're so vulnerable and have so few assets in that ancient society. We don't want them swearing oaths. To protect them, we don't want them swearing oaths. Now, the Gemara first clarifies the details of the incident. What is the reason that she was punished if she in fact did not derive any benefit from the dinar? She hid it in the flour, it got baked into some challah, and then she gave the loaf of challah to a poor man. How did she benefit from that? And the Gemara answers, because she benefited, ishtarshi, from the place of the dinar. I mean, think how little benefit this is. As the dinar took up space in the bread, enabling her to use less flour. Yeah, okay. So she used, like one less spoonful of flour, which was replaced by solid gold. But it didn't belong to her. So, okay, she benefited in the sense that, she saved a little flour when she, used that man's gold dinar in her loaf of bread. Therefore, she derives some tiny benefit from the dinar. The Gemara asks, if she in fact did derive benefit from the dinar, then what is meant by the statement, one who takes an oath truthfully? Wasn't her oath actually false? And the Gemara answers, it means that she was like one who took an oath truthfully, as her oath was truthful to the best of her knowledge. In any case, the woman was punished severely for a small mistake. The severity of taking a false oath, even inadvertently, is why the sages ceased administering oaths to widows. And it's worth learning this lesson. Don't take an oath. Don't swear. Right? Don't make oaths. If there's any way to do your business, move on in the world without making an oath, and that's why when we say we're going to give money to charity, or we take a pledge in synagogue that we're going to, give money to the synagogue, we always say, something like, I will give $500 bli neder. Bli neder means without making an oath. Right? It is definitely my intent to do it, but I'm not going to hold myself to the standard of making an oath because something could happen. Life could change. I could lose all my money, God forbid. Something could go wrong and I wouldn't be able to fulfill that. So we go out of our way to avoid making an oath. The Gemara questions if this could be the reason for the ordinance. If they refrain from administering oaths due to this reason, then why would this be limited specifically to a widow? Then you should make everyone not take oaths. Even a divorcee should not be allowed to take an oath to collect her kasuba as well, right? A divorcee, well, she's not taking money from orphans, right? Is she? Maybe, yeah. Well, how is a divorcee going to be taking money from orphans? Well, I guess because she's the stepmother. And, if she's going to receive money from the husband after the divorce, those children are orphans in the sense that they lost their mother. I don't know. At any rate, they say a divorcee. Maybe she's just in a different business venture. And the fact is she's a divorcee. Maybe we don't. I'm a little confused by this. Let's just keep reading. The point is, why are we limiting this thing that we don't want only widows not to take oaths? Everyone should be encouraged not to take an oath. And certainly women who in general are vulnerable in a patriarchal society. So if they're so even a divorcee should not be allowed to take an oath to collect her kasuba as well. Why then does Rabbi Zera say that Shmuel says they taught this only with regard to a widow? However, with regard to a divorcee, the court does administer an oath to her. Why would this concern not apply in the case of a divorcee as well? And the Gemara answers, a widow is different as she continues to live in the house with the orphans and performs many services for them in the running of the home. Therefore, no, and it might be, by the way, simple case. She was divorced from the husband, and then before she could receive the ketubah payment, he died. Okay, so that's a simple answer. She is a divorcee, looking for her ketubah payment that was not yet paid, but now the husband has died. So again, she's asking for the money to be paid out of the estate that now belongs to the orphans, right? The divorcee is tasked with making that oath that she never received the money before, but we don't want a widow making the same oath. So what is the difference? And the Gemara answers, a widow is different because she keeps living in the house with the orphans. A divorcee wouldn't. And she performs many services for them in the running of the home. Therefore, there is a concern that due to the benefit they receive from her as a result of the efforts she exerts for the orphans, she will rationalize and permit herself to take an oath that she did not collect any of her marriage contract when in fact she had received a part of it. She might say to herself, I haven't received my marriage contract. Whatever money's been given to me, it's in payment for my services that I'm, chasing after, cleaning up after, cooking for, working in this house on behalf of these orphans, and they should pay me for that. But in fact, that money could be characterized as a kasuba payment, and so she might end up swearing falsely without even realizing it. So we're protecting her from that. Rav Yehuda said that Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba said, it is Rav and Shmuel who both say that they taught only that an oath is not administered to the widow in court, as the oath that one takes in court is a severe oath, which involves the mentioning of God's name and the holding of a sacred object. However, outside of court, where an oath is not taken in this manner, the judges administer an oath to her. The judges administer an oath, but it's outside of court, okay? The Gemara asks, is that so? But Rav does not collect payment of marriage contract for a widow because she has not taken an oath, which indicates that he also would not administer an oath to her outside of the court. And the Gemara answers, yeah, this is difficult, as it contradicts the statement of Rav Yehuda. We skip a couple of paragraphs. Time is short. I'm going to start going fast now. The Gemara relates there was an incident involving a certain widow who came before Rav Huna and attempted to collect payment of her marriage contract from the orphans. And he said to her, what can I do for you? As Rav does not collect payment of a ketubah for a widow. The widow said to him, isn't the reason that I cannot collect payment only because of a concern that perhaps I already took some payment from my marriage contract? She understands the law. So then she just says, I swear, as the Lord of hosts lives, that I did not derive any benefit from my marriage contract. And Rav Huna says, even though the court does not administer an oath to a widow, Rav concedes with regard to one who leaps and takes an oath of her own initiative that her oath is accepted and she does collect the ketubah. Skipping down to 35b. The Mishna taught, Rabban Gamliel the elder instituted that she should take, for the benefit of the orphans, any vow that the orphans wish to administer to her. Rav Huna says they taught this law only in the case where she did not marry again. However, if she married again, they do not administer such a vow to her. Gemara raises a difficulty. What is the reason that a widow who married again may not take a vow in order to collect? It is because of a concern that perhaps she is lying and is not concerned about the vow that she took, as she relies on the fact that her new husband will nullify her vow. Right? A husband can nullify the vows of a wife, just like a father can nullify the vows of his minor daughter. So if she's already remarried, but looking to get her ketubah payment from the first marriage, maybe she'll vow falsely, knowing that her husband will nullify her vow for her. Ooh, what about that? If so, when she is not married, one should also be concerned that she may rely on the fact that when she will marry again, her new husband will nullify her vow. And the Gemara answers, the law is that the husband does not have the ability to nullify with regard to vows that his wife took prior to their marriage. So if she's trying to get the ketubah payment in order that it'll help her remarry, well, any vow she takes before she remarries, she has to hold by that vow. After she's remarried, maybe her husband could nullify the vow for her. It's starting to get quite underhanded, but they're just protecting, making sure that the law covers all cases. The Gemara asks, but let us be concerned that perhaps she in fact received payment of her marriage contract, and she relies on the fact that she will go to a halakhic authority, and he will dissolve the vow for her. The Gemara answers, Rav Huna holds that one who wishes to have a vow dissolved must detail the vow before the halakhic authority, the rabbi who's going to dissolve the vow for him. And if she says, well, I lied, so please dissolve my vow, he's not going to dissolve her vow for that reason, right? The system works. Rav Nachman disagreed with Rav Huna and said, well, even if she married again, the orphans can have the court administer a vow to the widow. And the Gemara asks, if she married, then her husband will certainly nullify this vow. And the Gemara answers that we, the court, administer the vow in public. And such a vow that we made her vow in public cannot be nullified by her husband in private. I'm just going to jump down even further because the hour is very late. Since Rav Huna's statement included the fact that one who requests that a halakhic authority dissolve his vow must detail the vow, the Gemara mentions that a dilemma was raised before the sages. Does one who comes to a halakhic authority and requests that he dissolve his vow need to detail the vow, or does he not need to do so? And Rav Nachman says he does not need to detail the vow, and Rav Papa says yes, he does need to detail the vow. You want a vow canceled, you have to explain to the halakhic authority what the vow is that you want canceled. They actually changed that, and the argument for not forcing the person to detail the vow is because if they give all the details of the vow, what they vowed to do or not do, the sage might then say, okay, and if you had known what this vow would create for you, the situation would create for you, would you have taken the vow? No, I would not. So on the basis of that, they nullify the vow. But when they get into the details of the vow, the sage might then nullify the vow as it was explained by the person who might have forgotten other aspects of the vow that they took. And that's why it's actually better. I took a vow last Tuesday, please nullify the vow. If you had known when you took that vow that it would, make your life so difficult, would you have vowed? No, I would not. Okay, your vow is nullified. So it's better, not to require all these details. Much in the same way I once worked in the public defender's office, and the public defenders would not ask their clients, did you do it? Right? Because people get confused, they lie to their lawyer, creates a situation. In this case, the halakhic authority might be better off not knowing exactly what the vow was and nullifying it. But in the area of a woman, who takes the vow to get, her ketubah payment out of the estate of orphans, and now she doesn't have to give the details of that vow, that's a problem. And we're going to leave it like that because we're at an hour and 5 minutes. So with God's help, we'll pick it up on page 36 tomorrow night after Shabbos ends. Let me take a couple of questions right now. Come on, Google Documents. Load. There we go. Tom Beck. What if both other groups write and witness and deliver valid Gittin? So you're talking about what he said at the beginning of class. If a husband says in front of 10 people, write a get for my wife, what happens if, they break up into various subgroups and both groups say, hey, he asked us to write a get, let's do it, write a get and witness it and deliver it. So she receives 2 gets. Well, presumably whichever one gets to her first creates the divorce. And the document that reaches her second, is meaningless. But what the reason we were learning that is because maybe the husband stops one of those groups and says, no, I changed my mind. I don't want to get written. So that stops group A from the get that they wrote and delivering it to the wife. But group B is unaware that the husband sought to do that and they deliver the get, right? And then prior to the decree of Rabban Gamliel, the woman would be divorced in that situation. I mean, would not be divorced because the husband showed that he wants it canceled, but he didn't communicate it to the agent that took that get to her. So after the decree of Rabban Gamliel, that the fact that he changed his mind is meaningless because he deputized both groups. He stopped one group, but the other group writes a valid get and delivers it to her in front of witnesses. They are divorced, and the woman can remarry if she wants to, relying on that valid divorce. Lucy, but isn't an oath different from a vow? Yes. Yes. But the nuances of oaths and vows, sort of we're not going to get into here. The point is that both are strong, both matter, and both should not be undertaken lightly. Okay, my friends, that's what I've got for us today. With God's help, we'll be together again tomorrow night. It's the latest Shabbos of the year, right? The beginning of summer. So I think Shabbos is going to go out tomorrow night, like 8:44 here in LA. I'm going to do my best to get on the air by like 9:30, maybe even a little earlier than that. I know it's so late. It's just always a little tough because, I'm in my year of St. Kaddish, so I usually lead the prayers of Mariv, like the evening service after Shabbos ends. Then I get home. Then I do Havdalah with Nina. And then I turn on the computers and everything and get everything fired up. And it just, I can never do it quite that fast. But hopefully by 9:30 tomorrow night, Pacific time, we'll get on the air for page 36. My friends, have a beautiful Shabbos. May be it restful, rejuvenating, refreshing.